Hi everybody, I just had to give this answer as a video because I find that when I try to do things in text, sometimes the sort of emphasis that I want to give to things can't be construed as I'd like. I hate using all caps. I hate trying to use font to show how passionate I am about some sort of concept that I'm trying to convey. So I wanted to use my face, use my voice, also to take a little bit of video of my thinking spot. This is down the bottom of our street in Sydney, and it helps remind me that amongst all the sort of turmoil that's going on, that there's a world outside the internet, but the acquittal of the former US president in this second impeachment trial has disturbed me far more than I thought it would. And I just wanted to convey my thoughts about what I think has become extremely clear, and I'm not sure how many people are actually cognizant of how clear it is. So I am using only the words of Americans rather than taking actual parts of the Constitution and putting them together in a textual answer here, because to me what really matters when we talk about politics, when we talk about statehood, are the people that make up the nation. So when you have a very, very different description of the country and a very, very different description of its operations occurring amongst the people that make it up, that's what matters. Rather than a nation of laws, really every country is a nation of people. So it kind of doesn't matter what a constitution says if that constitution is not applied. If the people who make up the state are operating on different terms, then a constitution is a document, and it becomes meaningless. And that's what's happened. That is actually what's happened. And the reason is this. A number of people have tried to explain to me that what's gone on in the impeachment process is a political process and not a legal one. Because a point that I am absolutely committed to driving home is that it was recognised that criminal offences occurred. Mitch McConnell, amongst other people, made it extremely clear that the former president may stand other trials for criminal behaviour. We know as a world that what would be regarded as a crime under most, at least British systems, and the US is a derivation of a British legal system, that can't be denied, that those actions which were filmed, which exist as the clearest possible evidence that was experienced in real time by even the jurors, but more importantly by so many US nationals and the rest of the world, make extremely clear what occurred on the day that the US Capitol was invaded by a violent insurrection. And that insurrection was a result of the actions of the president at the time. So, as was made extremely clear in the trial, the people who undertook those acts, even though Donald Trump did not smash any windows or hurt anybody per se in a physical sense, they believed they were acting in accordance with the will of the current commander-in-chief, as was expressly demonstrated by him himself, and it's available for public review, and it has been publicly reviewed. Now, people have tried to explain to me that the high crime in question was determined under a political process and not a legal one, that the impeachment process is not a legal process. Here's the consequence of that argument. It creates an essential difference between the legality of the United States as a state and its governing body. It essentially produces an hypocrisy. What it means is that crimes that exist under common law in the US, and I thoroughly understand the nature of privilege with respect to the president, but the impeachment clauses exist such that behavior that is unacceptable according to the constitution of the land, that those behaviors may have consequences. Those consequences have been removed by the taking of a position that separates the process in the Senate with respect to impeachment as a political process, which is not a legal one. And yet, the mechanisms we're talking about are the mechanisms by which legislation occurs. We are talking about the lawmakers. We are talking about the Parliament, the Congress and the Senate of the United States, which is responsible for the creation and maintenance and revision of the legislative structure. Yes, that means that body is separate from the legislation in a meta sense. They are responsible for creating it. However, if it does not apply, if we have crimes that can be prosecuted under that law which do not apply to the people who produce the law, then there is an essential difference between the operations of the government and the legality of the state. That's unsustainable. What it means is that there is an essential, complete, and ongoing privilege. Why? Because precedent is set. As was clearly explained, now what the US has in the case law for their impeachment process is a precedent whereby crimes are not crimes. Because this is a political and not a legal process, politics is now not a legal activity. This means that anything goes. It really does. The reason it means anything goes is because the nature of crime is now determined merely by the prevalence of power in terms of numbers in a sitting body. This means that completely unethical acts according to the legislation which actually exists can be undertaken so long as they are defended by a set number of people. This makes the United States a failed state because the people who are responsible for the legislation cannot be held accountable by that legislation. So we have a really essential problem there, one that is now irreconcilable by the precedent that has been set. The Constitution has actually been undone by the fact that it has been not only misapplied, but it's been undermined to an irrevocable degree. So I don't know how many people really understand that, because this argument whereby politics is separable from the legality that politics enforces, creates, and sustains means that now any degree of hypocrisy is maintainable by virtue of a majority in the sitting bodies. I find that intensely disturbing. It means to me that the United States cannot be a nation of laws because the laws are undone by the people who are responsible for them. They have different definitions, different applications, and in essence, there is now an irrelevance of the Constitution to the operations of the country. I don't know how this can be resolved. I hope, and of course don't want the US to be dissolved in any sort of sense, but the world has seen that whatever this American experiment in democracy is, it has failed. It has failed by virtue of the fact of the crimes as defined in the legislation that a body is responsible for producing are not defined and applicable to the body that produces them. This means that whatever goes on in the nation of the United States, it has nothing to do with the will of the people, because those people are subject to the law, which the parliamentarians are not subject to. And that's now been set in stone by precedent. And I have no idea how it's going to be resolved. So good luck. I hope and pray that there is some sort of remedy that occurs for this crime, because the crime now, to my mind, is not even just that of a now irrelevant president in a sense. It's a crime that's actually been committed by the entire edifice of the political system. A crime, when political, is now not a crime. You can literally shoot someone, and as long as enough people think it was a good idea, that's not criminal anymore.